Good morning, and welcome to the live stream service of the First Unitarian Church of Hobart, Indiana. My name is John Halstead. We are a religious community of people with diverse beliefs and shared values. Our diverse beliefs are expressed in our 6 sources, and our shared values are expressed in our 7 principles, both of which can be found online at uua.org. Together, we strive to grow spiritually, build community, and live our values in the world. We are currently in search for a full-time minister. When we do not have a minister in the pulpit, we invite members or guests to share a special message with us. This is one such Sunday. We are fortunate to hear from Reverend Gregory Pelley. Today's service was organized by Tina Porter, who is unable to be with us due to a family loss. Our prayers and meditations are with Brian, Tina, and their family. During this time of responsible social distancing, we are striving to maintain the authenticity of our services, so we want to draw your attention to several parts of our service today. The bell you heard ringing was our actual church bell, which was recorded by Bob Allen. The chalice which you will see being lit today is our actual chalice, which has been made possible by James Johnson. If you are willing and able, we invite you to leave your cameras on so that your fellow congregants can see you just as they would if you were physically present. There will be a time in the service when you will be unmuted briefly to say good morning to one another. We are currently streaming on Zoom, Facebook, and YouTube, and our service is recorded and will be made available for future viewing on Facebook, YouTube, and the church website. We want to thank our technical team, James Johnson, Valerie Lambert, and John Halstead. Please take a breath now and join us in a spirit of reverence as we listen to our prelude. Thank you, Jeremy. Please join us now for the lighting of our chalice. The words are printed on your screen. We gather this hour as people of faith with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life we share together. Our opening words are from Adrienne Marie Brown from Emergent Strategy, and Ruth Halstead will be reading them.
Excerpts from Emergent Strategy by Adrienne Brown. We are in an imagination battle. Trayvon Martin and Mike Brown and Renisha McBride and so many others are dead because in some white imagination, they were dangerous. And that imagination is so respected by those who kill based on an imagined radicalized fear of Black people. They are rarely held accountable. Imagination has people thinking they can go from being poor to a millionaire as part of a shared American dream. Imagination turns brown bombers into terrorists and white bombers into mentally ill victims. Imagination gives us borders, gives us superiority, gives us race as an indicator of capability. I often feel I am trapped inside somebody else's imagination, and I must engage my own imagination in order to break free. All of this imagining in the poverty of our current system is heightened because of the scarcity economics. There isn't enough, so we need to hoard, enclose, divide, fence up, and prioritize resources and people. We have to imagine beyond those fears. We have to imagine and conceive together. We must imagine new worlds that transition ideologies and norms so that no one sees Black people as murderers or brown people as terrorists and aliens, but all of us as potential cultural and economic innovators. This is a time travel exercise for the heart. This is a collaboration ideation. What are the ideas that will liberate all of us?
Thank you, Ruth. Please join us now for our opening hymn. There is More Love Somewhere, hymn number 95. The words are on your screen.
Until I find it, there is more love somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. I'm gonna keep on until I find it. There is more somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. I'm gonna keep on until I find it. There is more peace
now please join us for our affirmation of faith? The words are printed on your screen. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament. Service is its prayer. And this is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. You will now all be unmuted briefly to say a collective good morning to one another.
Good morning.
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 Howdy, howdy.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
See
Good to
Morning.
see
Morning.
Kimberly,
Good to see everyone.
Barb, and
Morning.
Zita. It's so good to see
Morning.
everyone.
Good
Good
week.
morning.
Everybody.
Morning.
Hi.
Hi, John.
Thank you, Maggie and Jeremy. Now is the time in our service when we take a moment to share joys and concerns which have arisen during the previous week. We believe that a joy shared is a joy multiplied, and a burden shared is one that is lessened. As the music plays, you can type your joys and sorrows in the chat box. Your joys and concerns will not be made part of the recording, which will be shared publicly later. We hope. Reverend Gregory Pelley will be our speaker today. Reverend Pelley listens to and wonders about the world and life and ponders what his bulldog is dreaming. He's terrible with commas and writes parenthetically, which is how he thinks. Reverend Greg currently resides in the smudgy liminal space between Pennsylvania, Delaware, and Maryland. Too rural to get decent internet connection, but still only a 10-minute drive to Starbucks. He's earned a fistful of college degrees, but his bulldog doesn't seem to mind. Oh, and he is the lead minister of the UU Society of Mill Creek in Newark, Delaware. I'm going to start this, and if the audio does not work here in a minute, someone text me or someone message me on the chat, and I will fix it.
Recently, with a colleague, and we were reflecting on the larger conversations of race and racial justice, not only in large abstract ideas, but where those conversations hit closer to the heart. Both my colleague and I share a lot of demographic space, both cis males, heterosexual, white, politically liberal, Unitarian, Universalist ministers. And I was noting where in some areas, particularly in the larger Unitarian Universalist world, it felt like my voice was no longer wanted, no longer needed in the urgent and necessary conversations around the failures of white-centered culture in our religious movement. And to be honest, I'm okay with that. That stepping back, that keeping my mouth shut and listening more and more deeply. The humbling action of supporting other people's leadership, especially leaders who arrive at their leadership from very different demographic notes than myself and my colleague. And I'm okay with this because I hold a commitment that the collective we, that includes all of us, that we do better, that we learn better, that we love better when there are a diversity of voices and experiences leading us. Now, of course, sometimes in the midst of these conversations, I don't understand what's happening. And I don't necessarily always agree with a particular decision or approach. And it's in those times when I get uncomfortable, I find myself in this uncomfortable tension. Now, on the one hand, I have been enculturated to believe that my voice, my thoughts, my ideas, my experience are highly valued and, well, singularly normative. And if my culture is normative, all else must be a deviation from that culture. By the way, when you hear the phrase white supremacy culture, that's what that's talking about. The power of white supremacy culture is the ability to define and enforce a normative, the power to claim a center and see that those not in the center as on the margin or marginal, and therefore feeling free to dismiss, discount, or disable their humanity. So on the one hand, I've been enculturated into that white supremacist culture, white supremacy culture. And on the other hand, I hold fast to this idea of a beloved community, to, in our words, to an awakening to love that calls me to share the power I've inherited, an idea that reminds me that power isn't a zero-sum game, but it's more like that flame of a candle, right? A single flame that can light thousands or millions of wicks without ever being diminished. An idea that calls me to listen more deeply and to restrain myself from fixing and advising and setting other people straight. And so there I am in this tension when I'm uncomfortable, and the tension itself is uncomfortable. But in that discomfort, if we're willing to sit in it, if we're willing to stay in that discomfort and not run away from that discomfort, it is a powerfully spiritual place to be. In my conversation with that colleague, I shared that when I feel like my voice is being silenced, when I feel like I'm being asked against my instinct to step back and let others lead, when I touch that, it gives me the space to imagine. And I do imagine. I begin to wonder, is this what it's like? Is this what I'm feeling right now? Is this what it feels like not voice heard? Is this what it's like to be dismissed, to be marginalized? Is this what it's like to feel like one's life experience does not matter to others? To feel like one's life doesn't really matter to the world? And it is in those moments of imagining, perhaps imperfectly, perhaps wholly inaccurately, but it's those moments that I find the spiritual core of our vision for the beloved community, a willingness to take our discomfort, our disagreement, our anxiety, and imagine the life within another human soul. And that is the power of imagination, but there is also a danger in imagination. And I was struck by this line, this quote by the poet Claudia Rankine. She wrote, "Because white people can't police their imagination, Black people are dying." And in those words, I hear the gunshots that killed Tamir Rice, Breonna Taylor, Philando Castile, and so many other Black and brown bodies who were murdered because in the white imagination, Black and brown bodies are inherently dangerous, always a threat. And I hear the cries of Black patients in our hospitals whose pain is dismissed, whose symptoms are ignored right up until the moment their hearts stop. And I hear the deafening silence of yet another Black or brown body rejected for a job when at last the final qualification was the right fit. White folks, or more personally, my own failure to imagine the experiences of those who appear different from what we presume to be the norm, has been the root of so much pain, sorrow, anguish, and death. My failure to imagine those experiences has been the root of so much pain, sorrow, anguish, and death. And in so doing, we trap ourselves in an imagination that's not our own. The American author and women's rights activist and Black feminist and doula, Adrienne Marie Brown writes, "I often feel I am trapped inside someone else's imagination. And so I must engage my own imagination in order to break free." And I think that most folks I know have had that sense, consciously or not, of being trapped inside other people's imagination, what Adrienne Marie Brown calls the imagination battle, that tension between the values and beliefs we've been enculturated to against a vision for the truly beloved community. A vision where the center is shared, not centered, but the center is shared across an entire host of demographic markers and identities, and it includes everyone without exception. A vision where the power is multiplied, it is never diminished. A vision for a kind of transformative community that raises the bar on what we call the common good. We have this vision of beloved community, not merely for our own personal blessing, our own singular advantage, but as a blessing upon the entire world for a higher common good, not merely for our own survival, but for the flourishing of all life for a higher common good. Friends, it begins with our imagination, particularly when we are in those profoundly uncomfortable spaces, when we ourselves are feeling dismissed or diminished, when we are feeling anger or anxiety, when we are feeling profound loss, and when we are feeling profound love. These are the spaces in which we can courageously imagine ourselves into compassion. So my invitation to you on this day is to take those moments of uncomfortability, and engage your own imagination so that you may break free from the imaginations of others. Open your heart to wonder, is this how it feels to be so unheard, so afraid, so unloved? And then let the wisdom of your imagination fill you with compassion, fill you with understanding, fill you with love. Let your imagination lead you to the place where not one more person dies because we failed to imagine their life. Amen. And I love you. And may we live in blessing.
Thank you, Reverend Pelley. Now is the time in our service for our offering. We give to remind ourselves of how many gifts we have to offer. We give to remember that we are part of something bigger than ourselves. We give because we believe in music and in sacred space. We give with the faith that together we have enough. The PayPal link on the screen is on the screen, but it is not clickable. A clickable link will be shared in the chat box. You'll have a moment here, or a minute or so here to make a contribution while the music plays. Thank you again, Jeremy. And I want to thank Reverend Pelley again, Reverend Greg, and Tina for organizing this as well. I want to thank James for his assistance, as well as Valerie, and Ruth for doing the reading, and also helping to keep me on track this morning. Our final words, many of you will be familiar with, are by Amanda Gorman, "The Hill We Climb."
Mr. President, Dr. Biden, Madam Vice President, Mr. Emhoff, Americans, and the world. When day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade. The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace, and the norms and notions of what just isn't always just is. And yet the dawn is hours before we knew it. Somehow we do it. Somehow we've weathered and witnessed a nation that isn't broken, but simply unfinished. We, the successors of a country and a time where a skinny Black girl descended from slaves and raised by a single mother can dream of becoming president, only to find herself reciting for one. And yes, we are far from polished, far from pristine, but that doesn't mean we are striving to form a union that is perfect. We are striving to forge our union with purpose, to compose a country committed to all cultures, colors, characters, and conditions of man. And so we lift our gazes not to what stands between us, but what stands before us. We close the divide because we know to put our future first. We must first put our differences aside. We lay down our arms so we can reach out our arms to one another. We seek harm to none and harmony for all. Let the globe, if nothing else, say this is true. That even as we grieved, we grew, that even as we hurt, we hoped, that even as we tired, we tried, that we'll forever be tied together, victorious, not because we will never again know defeat, but because we will never again sow division. Scripture tells us to envision that everyone shall sit under their own vine and fig tree, and no one shall make them afraid. If we're to live up to our own time, then victory won't lie in the blade, but in all the bridges we've made. That is the promised glade, the hill we climb, if only we dare it, because being American is more than a pride we inherit. It's the past we step into and how we repair it. We've seen a force that would shatter our nation rather than share it, would destroy our country if it meant delaying democracy. And this effort very nearly succeeded. But while democracy can be periodically delayed, it can never be permanently defeated. In this truth, in this faith we trust, for while we have our eyes on the future, history has its eyes on us. This is the era of just redemption. We feared it at its inception. We did not feel prepared to be the heirs of such a terrifying hour, but within it we found the power to author a new chapter, to offer hope and laughter to ourselves. So, while once we asked, how could we possibly prevail over catastrophe? Now we assert, how could catastrophe possibly prevail over us? We will not march back to what was, but move to what shall be, a country that is bruised but whole, benevolent but bold, fierce and free. We will not be turned around or interrupted by intimidation, because we know our inaction and inertia will be the inheritance of the next generation. Our blunders become their burdens, but one thing is certain. If we merge mercy with might and might with right, then love becomes our legacy and change our children's birthright. So let us leave behind a country better than the one we were left. With every breath from my bronze-pounded chest, we will raise this wounded world into a wondrous one. We will rise from the gold-limbed hills of the West. We will rise from the wind-swept Northeast, where our forefathers first realized revolution. We will rise from the lake-rimmed cities of the Midwestern states. We will rise from the sun-baked South. We will rebuild reconcile and recover in every known nook of our nation, in every corner called our country. Our people, diverse and beautiful, will emerge battered and beautiful. When day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it. For there is always light if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it.
Wow. How's that for now?
Please join me for the closing hymn, Building a New Way, hymn number 1017. Please join me in extinguishing our chalice. The words are printed on your screen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Thank you, James. You will all now be unmuted for our unmoderated coffee hour.